everybody to the newest episode of the She Speaks series through Let Her Speak. I'm Catherine Porth, the founder of Let Her Speak, and today I have an amazing guest. Her name is Meg Nocero. And Meg has a lot of hats that she wears. She's a coach, she's a speaker, and she's an author. She actually has 3 books that we will post along with this video for you all to check out. Her very first book that she ever wrote is called The Magical Guide to Bliss. And then that was followed up by Sparkle and Shine. And then her newest book that just came out is called Butterfly Awakens. And so you can kind of get a gauge of just the sparkly and, tiara wearing personality that is Meg Nocero. So thank you so much for joining me today, Meg.
Now, what an honor. I love the fact that, your slogan is let her speak, certainly engaging the conversation with a lot of women who have something really important to say in this world. And if I can be a part of that, I'm just super excited that I'm even in this space with you. So thank you so much, Catherine.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I'm honored for you to be here, especially because you have so many amazing things to share with the world. And I want to make sure more people know. So,
well, thank
you. So one of the first things just to start off with is, I know you have a very distinct divide between who you are and who you were and what you were doing and what you do now. So if you could share a little bit, I know that there is a moment with Oprah in your story that I think a lot of people are interested in hearing more about, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what your journey has been?
Well, as far as the Meg who I am, I've always been this really creative person. Even as a kid, I was always like drawing and dancing and all sorts of creative arts. The thing is that as you get older, that responsibility element, the ethos of perfection or whatever, many immigrants actually, like a lot of immigrant family come to a point where they want to do better than the generation behind them. So, they encourage them to go the routes which the parents or the families believe is going to get you to the next level. So doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, something like that. So, there's no room for the creative spirit. You have to actually be ready to work hard, study hard, do what you came here to do so that you can make a difference and serve the world in that capacity and bring your family up, as well as, so many other opportunities will come your way with education. And I'm a true believer in education. That's certainly been the foundation upon which my family and their family have raised us to the next point, where come from Italian line of wonderful people and wonderful passion, etc. But the same thing goes is that I love the creativity, music, art, everything. Anyway, that being said, I did go into the legal field. I started out learning languages. I speak 4 languages. I speak English, Spanish, Italian, and some French. And then I built on that with getting a master's in international security and conflict in American affairs, thinking that I was going to do something with diplomacy because I love people. I love to engage people and I love to solution and problem solve with people. And then, certainly after that, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? It's funny, there's a story about the Foreign Service and that they, alluded that I couldn't take my dog with me. So that wasn't going to happen. So next step, law school, of course, the next grade, because that was something that was always entrenched in my mindset. You become a lawyer or you become a doctor. So, and my mother, comes from a family, her father was a congressman of New York in the 60s. So, they were really entrenched in the politics, and every one of those kids in her family had a profession. She was a teacher, there was a lawyer, there was he did policy, and another one's service oriented. So there's always some kind of component of service in my life. That being said, I went into law school, and then I started with Immigration and Naturalization Service out of law school, and that was INS, and now became under DOJ, and then it became ICE under DHS. Well, everything, you're doing what you're supposed to do. Everyone's happy. You're a star, like you're a good point in the family where all like parents can brag about your kids. I always wonder, they always want, oh, I must have done well. My kid is doing well. You're only as happy as your least happy child. So, going along. But then my mother got sick. And when my mother got sick, that was when my world just exploded, because I remember I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter, which was like the first granddaughter in my family. I come from 3 girls. We're 3 girls, and we all have boys. And I was so excited, and and then I find out my mother had breast cancer. So this really happy time, collided with a shock, because when anyone hears that anyone that they love has cancer, immediately you don't think, well, we got this, we're going to beat this, you're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then you contemplate, what does that mean? And my mother was a very faith-filled person. She was very much a believer. She relied heavily on that, and she never doubted that she would be taken care of by, the energy above, whatever you want to label that. I believe in God, so we call God. Um, but she didn't survive that. She died in 2011, and she literally was my mentor and guide. I was grounded with her. She was my, place I would go to have those conversations that, used to have in college, where you could sit in the corner and you just like have, contemplate the world or philosophize the world and all the wonderful possibilities. And she passed away, and I was left, me being a woman who always believes that something wonderful is going to happen, and we'll fight this, we'll get through this together, possibilities abound. And then all of a sudden she was gone, and all of a sudden my world exploded. And it was funny. Up until that point, this is where Oprah's story began, which is kind of exciting. I felt like if I somehow met Oprah Winfrey, then my mother would believe in impossibilities, like believe impossible things could happen. So I was on a tear. Like I love to manifest, and it really makes me excited when people tell me, "Oh, you can't do that. Oh, that's not possible. That's crazy. You're nuts." I'm like, watch me. So I was trying to figure out a way to bring back that hope and inspire hope again. And I think my mother was like kind of entertained by it. I think that she thought I was being a little nuts. I actually flew to Chicago in October, of 2010 to go see if we can get last minute tickets, because that's the year she was actually, going off the air. So my sister and her friend and my best friend, we all went to, clearly we didn't have tickets, and we couldn't get tickets because it was an impossibility. And according to so many people, but we showed up and we had the best time. We were in the store. Anyway, long story short, it didn't happen. I didn't give up faith. I came back though, and in April of 2011, my mom passes away, and then Oprah goes off the air in May of 2011. So I'm just like, oh no, like what happened? My beautiful vision of a world where things unfold, in a beautiful way, came to a halt. And that's where the grieving process came in. So I don't know if you want me to touch base on this, or you want to ask more questions. Whatever you want. I'm just telling you, as far as the journey is concerned, before my mother passed away, she said to me, overwhelming stress will in fact kill you. And on the other side of the spectrum, you don't want to have any regrets when it's your time. So these are the final words my mother leaves me. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm a creative spirit. Oh my God, I want to create. I want to be in that realm. I want to play with the artists of the world. I want to go out there and create wonderful, beautiful things that make people happy. I did for a living, which, as a public servant, we cross-examined people who wanted to come to this country, who were here illegal and had to, they were seeking for a form of relief. And they were not necessarily happy to see me every day. I wasn't bringing joy to them, although I do hug a lot of people. I did hug a lot of people in my, when people got the relief they wanted and they felt like they needed to hug me, I was like, oh, hug, hey. And I felt like I really did good where I was, what I was able to do. I really showed up with the intention to be a force of good. But it was kind of wearing away on me. And I only realized that so much so when my mom died. So fast forward, picking myself up by the bootstraps, literally went from a pile of tears every day, coming home from doing my job, coming home at the end of the day, and just like, I don't know. And then I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And then someone said to me, this is where the beginning of my writing career started. Someone said to me, you need to channel the wisdom of your mother, and you need to connect to her, because that cut off of the physical world, you don't have to cut off from that spiritual, emotional attachment still. So what I did to try to help myself out of that depression, because I was depressed. They tried to give me medication. I'm very stubborn. I don't want to be, I love my husband, but he's the only one I want to be married to, not medicine, not anything else. If I can do something in a healthy way, if I can, I'm not saying that that's for everybody. I wanted to try it out. So a lot of processing through different techniques, but this was actually one that was very cathartic and very healing. And I was able to speak to her in a different way and hear her in a different way. And that was what happened after blogging for a long time. I came up with my magical guide to bliss. So basically, I channeled a guide to help guide me to a life of my dreams. So that's how the magical guide came to about. But really, the crux of that story of Oprah was finally, I wanted, I kind of gave up on that dream because it didn't seem like it was a possibility because she was off the air. Like, how am I going to go? Like, I'm not going to go stalk anybody. That's crazy. But, I'm a big reader and I follow those readers that inspire me, just like many people follow readers that inspire them. And everything started coming up. I had started writing and then I started getting curious about whether I wanted to publish it. So I went to an event with Hay House and I met Wayne Dyer. And he told me he liked my idea. So I was like, oh. And then I would blog every day. And I met someone named Amy Butler, who's a designer. And she started asking me to let her use my work, my writing. So I started having more confidence in my ability to write on that level. Like I have a ton of ability in legal. I can write a brief. I'm fine, but I didn't know whether or not I was just, a Van Gogh in the making or just someone who does stick figures. I didn't know, so when people started noticing what I had to write and say, then it gave me more confidence to start, jumping a little bit further out of the box of my vulnerability, exposing myself in a different way. And then ultimately, I met Wayne Dyer, I met Dr. Oz, I met all these people like randomly. It was like, I don't believe in random coincidences. I believe in synchronicity. So it turned out that I met Elizabeth Gilbert, who is by far one of my greatest inspirational, mentors, literally in the literary world. And she came with her book Signature of All Things to the Miami Book Fair. And I went there with my group, The Artist's Way, with this beautiful, if you're looking for creative recovery, that's a wonderful program. It's basically 12 weeks with a bunch of different people to recover the creative in you. It doesn't matter what profession you have, but it's called The Artist's Way, and it's by Julie Cameron. She's wonderful. Anyway, I went through this program, so we all together went to see Elizabeth Gilbert, and she started, we loved it. It was great. And then she basically had her webpage. I signed up, and then I saw this note: Oprah is coming to Miami with Elizabeth Gilbert, right? So I'm like, oh my God, my 45th birthday, I'm buying tickets. So I ended up buying, like the VIP tickets were super expensive, but I figured, okay, the platinum. But I found the seats that were great seats. I was excited. The day came, like lots of wonderful synchronicities. I had actually won 2 more tickets VIP the week before. So I got to invite friends of mine, which I love collaborating with other people. Bring more people, the better. If I can share the joy, I'm going to do it. So we went to this event. A lot of my friends were there in Miami. And I have a very dear friend who's also very much into manifesting. And she was up in the 3rd level. And she saw me. I wore this, talk about the tiara. I wore this yellow jacket that was super bright, electric blue shirt. And then, of course, I had this beautiful notion to wear my tiara there. So I was going, like, I'm celebrating my 45th birthday. I survived, like, what I thought was going to kill me. I'm here to celebrate, I'm there. And she sees me, she comes down to the floor. I don't know how she got on there because it's, only VIP people could come onto the floor, but she got in and she's sitting with us. And at this one point, Oprah is coming down the rows, left and right, coming down into the stage. It was the craziest thing I have to tell you, Catherine, because everybody was sitting. Nobody was getting up and going crazy to jump on her. Everybody was sitting in their chair, just calmly. It was the strangest thing. And you could see her going back and forth. And I knew when she came off the stage that she was going to tap someone to come up on the stage, because I met a woman named Lyndon Dalton, who is one of my very dear friends now, on Facebook, because she went to an event, and I think it was in Georgia. And at that event, she was picked from the audience when Oprah did that. So I was just like getting excited for other people. I'm like, oh, you got picked. How did that happen? And then she said, like, message me. So we've been friends ever since, by the way. And she told, this is what happened. This is what happened. So I knew she was going to pick someone to go up on the stage. I just didn't know, and she kept coming. And of course, if you have someone that you hold in highest esteem because of the inspiration they've given to you to feed your soul, if they come and you're like, this is not happening. It's like, this is impossible. Remember that it's impossible. And it's happening. I was just like, oh my God, she's coming. So of course, we're all supposed to be really serene and calm. And she's coming over to me with my friend, and she's serene and calm. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, because that's me. I get enthusiastic and I lose myself. So I'm sure there's a picture of her staring right at me. And I'm sure it scared the hell out of her. But she went to my friend next to me and she picked her to come on the stage. So the girl who's on the upper third, who had come down, and we had a seat that was empty next to me. I told her to stay. She got picked up. So I'm like, oh my God, she picked my friend. What happened to me? I had this visual before. I've been practicing manifestation visualization of how I would climb up on the stage from the left, go into the middle, and, you know, having my moment with Oprah. Well, I was just like, you know what? I was just like, Oprah had said before, the night before, there was an event when she was waiting for her role with Color Purple. And she just said, you got to let it go. If it's not coming to you, you know, you put everything in, you do your best. And at that point, you have to surrender and allow the universe to unfold as it should. So she says this the night before. Meanwhile, this is happening. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, you know what? When I had my mind, I got my mind, you know, got myself back down to some sort of grounding. I was like, okay, I'm happy for her. My time is going to come. And I'm watching my friend on stage, Mari, and she's talking to Oprah. She goes, I love that I'm up here. Thank you so much for the opportunity, but I can't be up here without my friend Meg. And she said it in front of 15,000 people. And I'm just like, you know? So she goes, well, where's Meg? And I was like, oh my God, she just said my name, you know, like, okay, this is happening. And then she basically said, look at you, Meg, with your tiara, come on up here. So I just marched up to the stage. And at one point in this moment, this really big moment, because at that point, it was not about me and Oprah and Mari and Oprah. It was me and Mari being generous, having done that. And at the same time, my generosity coming back to me because I told her to stay, you know, because I paid for the seat, she paid for, you know, so that was that exchange, right, of good. And then up there, I felt like this incredible presence of my mother. And I just like felt it. I just like looked up and I said, thank you. Just because of reminding me that my vision of the world, that might not be a very commendable one, or to other people a realistic one, is still definitely probable. It's something wonderful is always about to happen. So when I looked up, and mind you, this is actually a short part of the story because there's more to it. I'm not going to bore everybody, but I just like said thank you. And Oprah pulled me into her and goes, it's time to live the life you want. Kind of like I got permission from Oprah, and then I thought my mother was talking through her. So I'm just like, wow, I'm going to publish my book. I'm going to finish it and publish it. And then on top of that, I'm going to start, we ended up starting a nonprofit called Shine. So we could keep the energy of some events like that, like you do, that beautiful energy that, you know, is so uplifting and empowering and inspirational. So you could bring it to your community and you can make a difference in your world. And that's what we did. A year to the day, I published my Magical Guide to Bliss. And then we also launched our first Shine networking event, and I haven't stopped since. And ultimately, I'm not going to go into the details right now, but you know, come 2017, August of 2017, I made a decision based upon a lot of things that were happening around that I was going to resign from my job. And that was a leap of faith. And I can tell you this, it's been a journey. It's been a journey because what I have done, and that's what Butterfly Awakens is about, is kind of like listening to that bray of your heart, signifying that great I am and who you're called to be and who you're called to show up as, and also speaking your truth so other people get permission to do the same. And I think that's really beautiful what you do in your beautiful community, because it's kind of like some people need permission because they're waiting, they're trying to mute the doubts. There's this loud critical, you know, chitter chatter in your ears. And by you actually allowing people that space to start to, you know, play with it and question why I'm here, where am I going? What it calls to me? Why do I want to be of service? Then you answer those questions so everyone shows up. And when we all show up and then connect from a place of really love and empowerment and support, then everybody benefits, because, you know, you never know who you're going to impact. The ripple effect can go beyond you and many others and many others. And it's every one of us that's really important here. And everybody counts. Everybody counts. So yeah. So then my second book was the handbook. It was Sparkle and Shine. It's 108 magical mantras, a handbook of affirmations to really speak those wonderful words of empowerment to yourself. You pick a page and, you know, read it and start your day with that particular mantra or that particular affirmation. And then next year, September of 2021 is when my memoir comes out, Beautiful Butterfly. But I can tell you, like, I love when people say, that's not possible, because when they see me, that I really breathe life and possibility. I said, well, I won't tolerate that. I mean, literally my kids can't get away with saying no, that I can't do that. I was like, really can't do? It's going to really, if you say you can't do it, then you can't do it, but if you say, let me see how I feel about it, and let me see how I can play with it, and let me see what I can do with it. Totally different outcome, totally different outcome. And I'll tell you, you shifting your perspective, like you saying yes to your calling and my saying yes to my calling, it really does open up a different conversation. And it's a beautiful conversation. It's a beautiful, empowering one.
Yeah. I mean, what an incredible story.
Yeah, I was like, I could go on forever. I told you I talk a lot. So, it's like, stop me when you need to stop me. But,
No, I wanted you to keep going. It was just morphing into like other questions I was going to ask you anyways.
Oh, awesome.
I love this beautiful gift that your mom gave you, essentially, of this, essentially it's okay to be who you are and do what you want to do. And at the same time, for part of that message to come through Oprah is like mind blowing.
But it doesn't even stop there, because one of my favorite bands in the world, I love music. Music is like, if I feel like it's laughable to a certain extent, because I feel everybody has their own personal soundtrack that gets them through the day, right? So you put a song on, it can really like blast you into this echelon of empowerment and wonder and awe just by playing music. And then my father loves symphonies, and he loves to study the symphonic orchestras and the different tenets of the sounds, the cacophony of the music. So when you listen to a certain movement, you're like, oh, you just feel like you stand straighter and you're moving into your life differently. And so everyone has their own personal soundtrack. And I can tell you, I walked the Camino de Santiago de Compostela in this past 2018, which, literally I had no business being on that road anyway, but because I had a vision and I saw a lighthouse and I needed to get to the lighthouse, I organized with another colleague of mine, a really wonderful woman, Heidi Seifkes, and we both organized this great group of people to walk this, 111 kilometers. So I was on it at the end, let me tell you, with a sprained ankle, torn ligaments. I needed a soundtrack, I needed to play my music, because, and I, for a certain point in time, I thought I was going to get lost, because the first part I did get lost. I took a wrong turn and I had my music in my ears and I couldn't hear the lady. She's screaming, our guide, Rita, screaming, stop. And of course, I'm in the happiest place of my life. I'm like, la, 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 the flowers are blooming and the cows are walking past me. Meanwhile, I'm going literally the wrong way, adding more miles to this crazy journey. So I was like, I can't listen to this. But on day 6, when I was walking to Santiago, I had to play it. I think I played, between Lose Yourself by Eminem and all these other songs that you got one chance, you don't miss this opportunity, right? I'm like, yeah, I was like, and people were like watching me dancing with the earphones on. I think they must have thought I was having convulsions and I was crazy. But I was like, listen, at this point, I'm in agony, pain. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. And at that point, and I got, well, shocker, I got there, but I had to play and walk to my own beat, my own music, my own drum. And I think that's really what people, I think it's so funny, Catherine, because everybody has their own path to get wherever they want to go in life. And I think it's funny because when you give permission to people to figure out what that is, then they own it. They own that path. And it's not anyone else's forced upon you. It's that you own that. And then you start to walk differently. And that really has been the crux of my life. But back to the story, I love Coldplay. Coldplay was the music that sat with me in my closet when I was crying after my mother died. And the song that really spoke to me is Yellow. And I used to pretend that she was singing that song to me, look at the stars, look how they shine for you and all that you do. And look how you become. And I was just like, I hung on to that because, music speaks to me. And I wanted to meet, then of course I wanted to thank Coldplay because I wanted to thank them for getting me through like the darkest hours. And in 2018, I met this wonderful man, Dr. Habib Sadeghi. He's a healer and he's a doctor and he's an amazing person. And he started the Love Button Global Movement. And I connected with them. I didn't even know who I was writing to, but I knew it was this beautiful movement of love. And I really, it lights me up when people start talking from a place of love. It's just like, oh, that's a safe place. That's where we need to start from. That needs to be our foundation. When things are built from a place of love, even if it's passion for what you're doing or a love of your children or a love of the people around you, it's a different ultimate outcome. So I wrote to him And he wrote back to me and invited me out to California to Chris Martin's house. And so me, Chris Martin, and all these people that were like celebrities, and I'm sitting there. And that was actually the crux behind one of the reasons I decided to resign from my job, because I figure I'm where I want to be, in the playground that I want to be in, the sandbox. I like this creativity, and I think it's signs. I pay attention. I pay attention to what happens around me. So these are big things. Like, I'm telling you, I think if it were subtle, I would not be like, that's nothing, it's just a coincidence. But because these are big things that happen, that I say yes to it. And even in conversation with you, this is a big thing you're doing. I don't know how big you think it is, but I really see it as a big thing. So you say yes to the big things, you show up and support the big things, because you know what kind of impact those things are going to have beyond your wildest imagination, Catherine. So I can see that for you. I see that a lot for a lot of people. They don't see for themselves, because I have been able to negotiate my doubts down to the pure power of intention, and where you're coming from, and if it's a good place, from a place of love. And from that place, that's empowering. That's true spirituality playing out and breathing life into you and others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything that's done from a place of kindness, love, authenticity, and just genuine care is, regardless of what it is, it's going to come across as something that's meaningful and worth doing.
And sign me up too. And sign me up. I mean, like that, sign me up. I don't deal well with people who propose hate, division, based on someone's skin color or their gender, or I don't, that is completely antithesis to who we are, because at our core, we're all spiritual beings having this physical existence. And, basically that's why we're here, to help each other learn and grow and enlighten each other, through our experiences, that wisdom. Maybe I don't have to go through that because you did, and you're going to share it with me. Or maybe I'm at a point in place that aligns and mirrors what you've been through, and you can guide me and help me and grab me, put your hand back and pull me along with you. That is the true beauty of who we are as a collective consciousness and collective whole. And that is where we all get to rise together. And I find that really something that like I said, sign me up to that. I'll join that. I'll do that,
Yeah. And I love that there is this common thread of you showing up, like being able to take the dive and, well, let me send a letter to this person that I really admire, and we'll see. The worst that could happen is that it goes unanswered.
Exactly.
But the best that could happen is that you get invited to California and you hang out with Chris Martin. So
there you go. And the first song he played was Yellow. Go figure.
Of course.
The first song, of course he plays is Yellow. And I'm sitting there like, once again, she speaks to me from beyond. And that's truly how I see it. You might not have to see it that way, but I live my life as if I'm watched over, which is a beautiful way of going through life, because you're never alone. And even when you feel at your most lonely or despondent or desperate, you know that you have this beautiful energy source coming at you. And even when I'm crying, and that's how you always say, when I'm crying, and then I enjoy the tears sometimes it's agony. But when even at that point, you feel like you're being bathed with this release, and that's really important, the release. And that goes back to the whole faith over fears. And what you're saying is like, what do I have to lose? It's like, literally, what do I have to lose that I can connect to somebody from a place of intention or intuition? That's huge. Women got the intuition down. They don't pay attention to it a lot, but they have it. And we know when someone's going to harm someone we love, we need to cross the street before we engage. Literally, that's what we protect ours. We protect our friends. And it's in such a loving way and nurturing way that needs to be elevated a little higher. And then the common good may benefit very much so by that, by not, by embracing that, divine feminine as well as the masculine, those two together, we work together. I always say the universe abhors a vacuum. They don't like, the universe does not like unbalance. They're going to find its way back. Sometimes we need a really significant contrast so that we understand what we're looking at, so that we can get back to a point of conversation again. And that truly is, with like, even that's, so it's funny because you say like, where if I come from, where I am. So the creative child to, the inquisitive, curious one, maybe who dealt with a lot of doubts, because I got bullied as a kid too, I was really a loving person. And then people would just take advantage of the weakness. Now it's like, don't mistake my kindness for a weakness. I will be kind, but I know. So it's kind of like people like see one side of me and they're like, what happened? I said, listen, you're crossing my boundaries. I've given you my boundaries. And you say, no, I'm not going to pay attention. Well, then what do you think is going to happen, But I'll do it in a loving way. I'm like, you own your stuff. Everyone's accountable for how they show up in this world, literally. And I always check myself, because if things were happening really kind of out of whack, and I was like, okay, I gotta go within on me, figure out what's happening with me. Why am I angry? Why am I this? Why am that? And then at least honor and own my emotions so that I can show up a different way, perhaps. But the cool thing is it can be fun. I got permission last week. I have a wonderful intuitive friend, and he always brings some beautiful light to my life. And he said to me, I think that because my arcs for my book, my Butterfly Awakens, comes out 10 years to the day, April 12th, 2011, and my mother passed away. So my book, that's based upon the grieving process, because it's a memoir of transformation through grief, it's actually 10 years in the making, comes out the day my mom died. And which I personally think that is completely one of those moments again, where, okay, I got it, I see this. So in the grand scheme of things, the permission that I got was, you learned a lot through pain. Now it's time to learn through joy, because you can have same experiences on that level too. So you can release the need to suffer so much. It gives you a lot of context. It might be a really quick growth process for you, because when we feel that kind of uncomfortableness, that's usually the time that is pushing us outside our comfort zone, right? And how we respond to that. But we can show up with joy. And that's my book is Bliss, the following your bliss, the following your call, the following your passion, the awakening and the coming alive to your dreams. That can happen too. And you can learn a lot through that as well. And it's kind of like that beautiful rose. When you get past the thorns, you see the top and it starts blossoming, and you turn into the who that you've always knew that you were, right? To find your voice and to actually own it and honor it. And then, be in circles where, you're a part of a group that does the same. It's really magical. And I know magical may have different connotations for a lot of people. I embrace that word, because I think that my favorite author, at least the quote, Roald Dahl, because Roald Dahl is a little quirky too, he's a little off the beaten path, but he said, with glittering eyes, I watch the world around me. Those who don't ever see the magic will never find it, in the most unlikely places. And that's the whole point. I know that I bastardized that quote, but the bottom line is that if you're looking for the magic, you will find it, because that what you are looking for, you will find. And the seekers are the ones, I just like the truth finders and the seekers and the healers are the ones to bring the light, to this world. And instead of cursing the darkness, you light a candle. So it's really quite empowering. And then when I'm feeling low, I can turn to those people that I've given to sustain me as well. So it's that whole give and take of that cycle of, give and receive. And the receiving is just as so a lot of women have a hard time receiving, because they feel like, I need to be the one to give. I need to be the one this. But it's really honoring another person's path too, when you can say, one of my best friends always says, when someone says to you, great job, you say, thank you. And then to yourself, I think so too. So you actually truly receive. So when I say to you, what a beautiful conference you put on, you say thank you. And internally you say, I think so too, because then you own the power of what you actually did. And it allows you to do more of the same. So it becomes not needing the external approval. You just own the response from the hard, beautiful, loving output that you've done.
I really like that. I like that. I've been doing a lot more reading about internal monologues of how to talk to ourselves, whether when we need to talk to ourselves in the third person to gain perspective of the situation instead of feeling so close to it. We remove our ego a little bit and step back and think of it as I am narrating another person right now. And so I really like that internalized, you need to, whenever you get a compliment, it's so easy for us to just be like, oh yeah, sure. It was fine. Yeah.
Or you'll say, no, I don't. Oh no, I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. You want to deflect, the compliment because we need to come across as humble. But you can
be humble. But I'm offering this to you. It's not for any purpose other than acknowledging you. And as a coach, we all know when you acknowledge and validate someone, the best gift that they can give to you is actually hearing you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling you before, I was like, one of the greatest lessons you learn as an attorney is to be quiet and listen. Because when you listen, you hear so much more. And, sometimes you let things go and they'll resolve themselves, or sometimes you know how to act, what indicia is given to you to actually make the next best move because you listened, you gave the space to hear. So I love that you're doing that third person processing. I have a quote behind me. It goes, "Of course I talk to myself. Sometimes I need expert advice." Literally. And I didn't buy that. Someone gave that to me. My sister did. So there you go. So, I appreciate those little things, you know your best counsel, and you know how to guide your path best. And I think when you start paying attention to the purest part of yourself, the place that comes from love, then, that is a different experience. And you come from a place of negativity or doubts, totally different. I always say, if you get that part where you're like negative all day, go back to sleep and reset. I think that Abraham Hicks says that, go back to bed, sleep, reset, and then join me again, because nothing good can come of the other. Nothing good,
Right.
for sure.
Right. I was actually just looking through a few mottos. I have to give a motto for something I'm working on right now. And one that really struck me, and something that you said kind of made me think about it, was, I can't remember the exact quote, but the essence of it was that if you want to be a leader, leaders are not grown from knowledge. They're grown from what they share.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I feel like that's something that I think a lot of us, men and women, struggle with, is what we're sharing. And are we really, instead of just keeping it all to ourselves, like you've brought up a few times with different things, is that the humans and the human spirit is all about collective wisdom. And we can really only achieve collective wisdom through sharing with each other until we learn how to read each other's minds, which I don't think is coming anytime soon. You have to share. It's not so much what you're thinking about, and it's really about what can you share and impart on others to really help them.
Yeah. And the greatest thing that you're saying right now is that we are the greatest storytellers. What do we love more than anything is a good story, be it through a song or music or a good book. We love stories. We love stories, story, la storia. And la storia in Italian means history. What is your history? How do we pass on a legacy forward to the other? They say the greatest art that's missing nowadays is the family dinner, where you sit around the table and you share your stories. Italians used to do that so well. We don't do it so much because everyone's time factor, which is really sad. But my favorite time of the year is mostly the holidays, when even Thanksgiving, when you sit around the table and you have those moments of storytelling where people share these wonderful stories that you bring and you give your kids and they give to their kids. It's a continuation of this human nature needs a good story. I mean, even back in the day, they used to draw the cavemen on the walls when they had no words, and then the hieroglyphics, they tell a story. My daughter showed me a papyrus that she's studying with the Egyptian history. It's all a story because we're storytellers. And I love this because this is so friggin' empowering, is that you can change the narrative of your own story anytime you want. You can change the narrative. And I laugh because if something's happening, and I like to believe I can manifest things. Like, what would I like to manifest? And I'll write the story. How do I want it to unfold? But then I obviously give way for the universe to unfold as well. But, paying attention, like literally, I don't have control of my external circumstances, but certainly how I react to it and what I want to see and what's the next best step, because then you start paying attention to and I love it. It's like Shakespeare, right? All the world's a stage and you're the protagonist, you're the primary actor, right? So if you look at it that way, you become the observer, what you were talking about before. You start to observe the story, which is great because you're stepping back as a third person, observing your own story in such a way as you make the choices in the opening monologue, whether you tell that person it's going to be a tragic drama or is it going to be an uplifting romantic rom-com. You get to choose. Like literally you get to choose. And that is so cool. And I'm not saying you can put your story on other people, because that'll get you into trouble. You honor other people's space as well. Everybody has their own path. That's the beauty of the experience that we have in this particular, time and place, thank God, because other people's stories told one where women had a chance to show up in a different way, being able to speak and having their voices heard more and more, to empower them to step into the, lean in, the whole idea behind Sharon's, Salzburg, right? Something like that.
Sandberg.
And yeah, Sandberg, thank you so much. Thank you. But where she says, lean in, because if you don't lean in, we only get half a story. We only get half a narrative, one that only depicts one side of the coin, when we need both, because that's what we need, is a balanced picture. And you can tell when society is feeling more balanced and they're expressed, there's less, hostility, and there's more conversation. And that is amazing to me. And that is the coolest thing about being an author. I mean, like literally, I can tell a story. I can come out, even if I feel like, even if I'm the worst writer in the world, I'm still telling a story by virtue of my words, by my writing, by helping someone improve their lives, empowered into something more that they don't see for themselves. It's all a story. And what kind of story do you want to tell? Of service, of gratitude, of love, all these wonderful uplifting vibrations that we're all really striving for. And I think that will help us thrive if we all embrace it.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. It's basically, we're our own choose your own adventure novel.
I love that. Yes. I love those. Turn to page 15 if you want, if Joey wants to go to the zoo. Okay, turn to, you know what I mean? But we're taught as children to tell stories, and that's the coolest thing. Movies. Oh my God, movies. Who doesn't love a movie? Just a story. And they say the best stories that you can give through your vulnerability, by the way, back to your point where you're saying being vulnerable to your story, is when they're done with the book, the conversation for their own life begins. Mm-hmm. That is when it somehow triggers something within that person, that they start to look at their life a little differently, and it opens them up to possibilities that they never saw before. I agree. Star Wars is the greatest at the end. I mean, come on, you're flying through. I mean, it's the hero's journey at its finest. Right?
I was gonna say it's the classic hero's journey.
Classic, and we're all heroines, right? Like, I'm trying not to say heroine the drug, but heroines of our own journey, right? That's awesome. And the more people I see that look like me, or that maybe look different than me, I start to look at theirs. Then, I mean, my God, you're opening up a whole new conversation of people being heard. Remember, that is the space where we all grow and we all learn, and we all learn to love each other from the place of heard, because then they don't no longer become strangers. They are, my friends, or my companion, or my colleague, and my, that's a beautiful thing. They no longer scare you, but they actually empower you. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, what better way to go through life? And maybe I live in a Pollyanna. I'll take it. I choose that. I choose that world, because if I can't believe we are better together through what we say, and that's really, I've lived in different countries. I lived in Colombia, South America, and I lived in Italy when I was in college. So and I've been exposed to different people from all over the world, and I just can't get around a whole echelon or population of the world that are labeled as such, right? Don't put, I mean, that's a simplistic way of looking at people, which you can't do. Putting them all into this, amorphous, shapeless kind of them and us. That's only giving someone power and control. That doesn't help the common, denominator. That is not, because at the end of the day, I could have more in common with someone on the other side of the pond than I do in my own backyard. And I break off that opportunity when I give those unnecessary labels to another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I agree 100%. So the last question I have for you, since you've talked a little bit about balance, I mean, I would say a lot of people are thinking about the complete imbalance that 2020 has thrown us into. But because you're such an optimist, I mean, what has been your view and the essentially like the motto that you've carried through with everything going on with 2020?
Okay, so you were talking about mottos, and the first thing that came to mind is what we attribute to my mother, which was live, laugh, love. In Italian is vivere bene, ridere spesso, and amore. Live, laugh, love. And I find that when I put equal emphasis on those three things, I get balance in my life. And with 2020, a lot of the, emotions that came up were fear, uncertainty, um, confusion. There didn't seem like it wasn't used. It was interesting because this, 2020, they say 2020 vision is clear vision. You have clear vision, you see the best at 2020. And, interestingly enough, I think that we all see a lot more clearer now, having had the opportunity to pause forcibly, mind you, and recognizing that, Mother Nature certainly got clearer in the interim, where we all stepped off and then gave that opportunity to heal on a global plan with everything. And one of the coolest things that I think that came from 2020, certainly, is different conversations have begun, and a lot of people who maybe were not willing to speak up have started talking and engaging in the conversation. And we see more clearly. We do, because there's a lot of division in society, but you can't heal something unless it's exposed to air. And one of the things that I also saw is the breathing capacity. A lot of the virus attacked people's ability to breathe. So maybe we need to all start to take a step back and breathe before we speak, breathe life into ourselves, take care of ourselves better, take care of each other better. A lot of the essential workers who showed up threw themselves, out there to save other people's lives. This is something that is heroic. This is something that people do without thinking, because that's what they were called to do. So honoring those places that perhaps never got the attention before. Teachers, oh my God, my daughter homeschooled. It's been a crazy challenge. Like, she does not excel in homeschooling. She likes to be around her friends. But teachers deal with that every day. They're trying to teach a bunch of kids who have all these little hormones running through their bodies, and they're changing, they're growing, et cetera. So honoring that component as well, teachers and what they're doing for our children. And it made us all step back and think of that, how interconnected we really are, what one small act. And I am a believer that if a mask is not a bad thing. If it's going to protect someone else, I have no problem to engage. It's not forever. It's just until we get a handle on something. So it's not a political stance. It is just a stance. If science tells me this, and I believe in science, I believe in the scientific inquiry, then I do it because I am a part of a whole. And that, I think, is what really has brought to light with 2020, as far as I'm concerned, is that we see ourselves hopefully starting to open up to this whole idea that we're part of a whole, and where there is injustice that affects us all, not just one, because ultimately, other fears come up and every other thing. So if we start to shine light in those areas that we can heal, then why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we have those conversations? And why wouldn't we start from that place to really turn a corner to something better, from a bad situation, from the pain? Remember, we learn from wisdom from pain. We can also learn wisdom from joy. But if there's pain, then you have to flesh it out to start the healing process. And that is a process. And it's, I'm really a believer in trusting the process, and and trying to, like I say, bring my intentions to the fore and be responsible and accountable to my behavior. And to my children, I teach them the same thing. And we take care of each other that way, and we can be better that way. And that really is what 2020 taught me. And we were saying before, and that maybe the definition of extreme needs to be redefined at this point, because everyone's like, oh, so 220. It's going to be a word in the dictionary defined as everything that you thought couldn't happen, that will happen. It's kind of like inconceivable. Ever seen that movie Princess Bride, where he keeps saying inconceivable? I don't think you know what that word means. You're not using it properly. But I think, the great halt, stopping, we all stopped in our paths. Opening up through Zoom, I wouldn't have met you, Catherine. So, this is that opportunity where you're in another state, I'm in another state, and we have that opportunity to connect, and which is really beautiful. And at the same time, being really gentle and kind to ourselves so we can be gentle and kind to another. I think that is important, because nobody went through this before, I wasn't around in 1918, so I wasn't there. But I can imagine that's what they were probably saying to themselves too. I mean, together we will rise, separate we will fall, and ultimately, a virus doesn't have a person. It doesn't have a decision as to who it chooses. It's like it just, is part of nature. It'll find a place and make a home. The bottom line is that we can choose our actions accordingly as based upon the information that we have. So that in line with everything else is really, and that generosity that we talk about with our good friend Berta, the generosity, the generousness of who you are and what you are and how you show up is another beautiful thing. Because I do believe in the karmic cycle of life. When you do good for others, it comes back to us in ways that we never even imagined. And I think keeping that in mind, and acting from a place of abundance in that respect, that fear will subside, faith grows greater, stronger, and the light we all have, help each of us to shine.
I love that. I think that's a great note to end on we can let fear get the best of us, or we can let hope and kindness get the best of us.
Yeah.
So
I choose that.
It's a choice.
Hope and kindness. Sign me up for that. Sign me up for that. What Mother Teresa said all the time is, if you have a rally for peace, I'll join you, but rally against war, I forget about it, right? So if it's about peace and kindness and hope, I'll be there. That's for sure. I'm sure you will as well, Catherine.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yep. I choose peace and kindness.
I choose peace every time. Every time. Well, maybe not every time. I'm a lawyer, by the way.
Well, yeah. Sometimes there are arguments that need to be made.
Yeah, but ultimately you get there. We'll all get there. We're all going to get there. At the end of my Camino, there was a beautiful post, and it said in 5 different languages, "May peace prevail on earth." So that truly is my intention, is that we find a way to get there together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Meg, for
awesome.
sharing so much about your journey and just your knowledge and wisdom of how to look at the world. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for the space. And I thank you as well for everything that you're doing, because you inspire me. So it goes both ways.
Oh, good. It's the balance. It's the two-way street. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Catherine. This is awesome. And, I hope I somewhat entertained, perhaps. But, the whole reality is what you said before, is the vulnerability to the story and sharing what you have gone through so that others can know that they're not alone in there. So that's really
that's the biggest part of it, is that we're all on different journeys and different paths, but we all have ways that we're heading in similar directions. Absolutely. And if we can go together, that's even better.
Even better. Yeah. Absolutely to that.